Hello and welcome to the Many Faces of Science podcast, where we discuss the different jobs that use science, the people who have them, and how they got there. We hope these episodes act as a guide for people who want to explore more than just academia and a gateway to the curious-minded. I'm your host, Caelum, and today we're going to be chatting with the Director of Science Communication at the Phillip and Patricia Museum of Science, which is located in Miami, Florida, in the United States of America, Dr. Cassie Freund. If you enjoyed the episode and or found it useful, you can let us know on our social media. We're on Twitter, Instagram and TikTok.
Hi,
Here
Cassie.
we go.
Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing really well, thank you. It's quite warm over there at the moment, isn't it?
It's very hot. We're having a heat wave. It's not very good for people or the coral reefs here, but hopefully it breaks soon.
Hopefully getting some colder weather and hopefully some rain that's not too severe. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, what is your official job title?
Yeah, so I am the Director of Science Communication at the Phillip and Patricia Museum of Science in Miami, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So basically what that means is that I'm in charge of all the kind of scientific communications that the museum puts out.
Yeah. Okay, that leads into my next question, which is, what are your current job roles, kind of the main three if you can? If you can't split it down to three, that's entirely fine.
I think I can split it to three. So the number one thing I do is help create content for the museum. So this means things like blog posts. It means exhibits, the things that are out on the floor. And also I help with social media. And the goal is just to make sure that the Museum for Science is sharing scientific information in an interesting way and also a way that's easily understood by most people. So the second, going along with that, the second main job role I have is fact checking. So science museums in general are a place where people go to get reliable scientific information. And we want to make sure that everything we put out is correct. And so fact checking is a big part of my job. Which means a lot of times I'm digging deep into scientific papers, searching on government websites and stuff to make sure that we have the right information. And then a third thing I do is I also help design new educational projects that the museum does. We have education for people of all ages. And so helping with that is another big part of my job.
Sounds like really, really broad scope of the different things that you do.
Yes, it definitely is. No 2 days are the same. It's never boring, which I really like.
That's really good. So, did you always want to have this job, or did you want to be something else when you were younger? I know I've interviewed some people and they were like, I had no idea this job existed when I was younger, so I'd be interested now.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, I think that this particular job is relatively new in the grand scheme of things. So, I certainly didn't know that it was a thing that you could do when I was younger. And kind of my impression is that it was really during the early years when I was doing my PhD. So 2016, 2017-ish, that this idea of science communication really caught fire, at least, my kind of perception of it. And it became a thing that people wanted to do and also felt like they needed to do really well. And so I think this kind of position is, like I said, relatively new.
When you were younger, what did you want to do then, if you didn't want to become a science communicator?
Yeah, I think that there's probably, like many people who might be listening to this, I always wanted to be a marine biologist.
Okay.
I grew up in the center of the U.S. where there were no oceans whatsoever, very far from oceans. So I don't know why I wanted to do that. I think I just saw a lot of, photographs and documentaries and thought the ocean was really, really beautiful. But actually, in my personal research, I ended up studying tropical forests.
Oh,
yeah. So I've kind of done a lot of things.
Same level of diversity, very different kind of area.
Yes, very, very different kind of area than oceans. But yeah, my master's research and also my PhD research were both tropical forest centered.
So has there been a person or a moment which changed your career?
So yes.
Okay.
A resource, I would say. So
okay.
At the very beginning of my PhD, again, like 2016, 2017, I kind of got involved with a new science news website that was also at its beginning, and it was called Massive Science. And Massive Science was an initiative to teach scientists, largely graduate students, how to do science journalism.
Okay.
It filled this really important niche because traditional journalists, I think, aren't always as well equipped to report on very technical scientific work as people who work in the field are.
Yeah.
But scientists also lack journalism skills, of course. And so Massive Science was a way to bring that kind of training to young scientists. And I was actually one of the early beneficiaries of the effort and early writers on the website. So I started writing for them, and then I kind of slowly worked my way up through their editor ranks, and that gave me a huge amount of experience. And it was really just kind of a stroke of luck, stroke of luck that I found this, stroke of luck that I liked doing it, but it definitely gave me a big leg up to get to where I am right now.
So how did you find that initiative? Was it kind of something that there was like a thing on school? You just kind of saw a post somewhere and went, that seems interesting.
I believe I first saw it on Twitter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the joys of social media.
The joys of social media, definitely.
Yeah. So, and actually the website Massive Science is kind of currently on hiatus. One of the great things they did was pay writers, but funding for that is hard to come by. Mm-hmm. But that model that they have, like training people, is really incredible, and there's currently nothing else like it out there.
Yeah.
When I think we had a hand in developing this whole kind of generation of science writers. And so I guess if anyone out there is listening that wants to help us revive that, very interested to hear what you're thinking.
Yeah. I know. I think there's some initiatives such as like Famelab, kind of in the UK, Famelab, and different stuff like that, kind of getting young people involved in science and teaching them, like presenting skills and kind of journalism stuff as well. I think, which is, I know I've got a couple of friends who've done them, and they found it really, really beneficial, not only for developing the skills, but also networking, and then that's then allowed them to get more opportunities as well.
Oh, yes, 100%. And the people I worked with at Massive, we're still really tight. We have our own little network, and it's been great, like you said, in bringing new opportunities, to me.
So yeah, definitely watch out for when that comes back. And also, as Cassie said, if anyone's interested in helping get that back up again, please either get in contact with us and we can get in contact with Cassie, or get in contact directly.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. How did you get the current role you're in?
So I applied pretty widely to jobs toward the end of my PhD program. Mm-hmm. So I knew going into the PhD that I didn't want to be a professor.
Yeah.
I was doing it to get the skills and the credentials so that I could move forward with, working in other spheres. And so, like I said, I applied quite widely toward the end of my PhD. And if anyone listening to this is getting to that stage of their career, I'll just give you a little lay of the land. It took me about 14 months of applying before I got a job. So I started as I was going into my last year of my PhD program. So I still had a lot of time, and doing that helped me get some of kind of the early, job hunting mistakes and, weaker job application materials corrected before I needed to find a job. So that's like a piece of advice that I think is really important is start early to let yourself get some of those early missteps out of the way. I put in about 60 applications to a pretty wide range of jobs. So I was looking at everything from data science to heading up conservation initiatives for institutions like zoos, both in the US and abroad. And I was even looking at non-professor track jobs, like program management at universities. But I ended up just finding this position online, and I knew it was a really good fit for my skills. And so I applied. And of course, I got the job. And it's pretty awesome because it lets me still kind of pursue what I'm interested in, which is biodiversity, ecosystem conservation. I just do this in the context of a science museum that
Yeah.
focuses on a really wide range of science.
Kind of with the interviewing for the position, was it there was lots of people going for it, or was it kind of just kind of a select group of people?
That's a really good question. I get the impression, so when I applied to this job, I had seen it a few times online already, and so I'm thinking that they just couldn't find the right fit,
Yeah.
which, as frustrating as it is, that is really important for institutions especially where you're working really in close kind of collaboration with people. It is all about how you get along. And my coworkers, some of them like to say like what the vibe is like.
Yeah.
So job hunting is hard, but everything just lined up just right, and I made it.
And I'm very, very glad you did, because
Thank you.
you have a wonderful, you have a wonderful job. Linking with your job being wonderful and hopefully you really enjoying it, what is the most fun day you've had at work so far?
So that's a tough question because every single day is different. But
Yeah.
I think one day that's really been memorable for me recently was we opened a new special exhibition at the museum, and as part of that, we have members. So museum members, people who pay like a membership fee, and then they can come to the museum anytime they want over a year. One of the things that the museum does for them is we do members only preview nights. So they get to come in and see new exhibitions before the public.
Yeah.
And so as part of that, I got to give a couple of presentations about the science behind this exhibition to the members. And it was a ton of fun. At the museum, we do our public presentations in our planetarium. And I also really happen to like public speaking. So it was a lot of fun to just be standing, in the front of the crowd, in front of this amazing planetarium, talking about science and answering people's questions. Like, for the end, I was just having a conversation with the crowd about science. And I think that kind of opportunity is really special for people. And of course, especially for the kids in the audience to get up close and personal with a scientist is not always something that people have access to.
That sounds like a really good day. It's really important, I feel, that people do have access to go and talk to scientists and not necessarily have them be up on a pedestal and feel like it's unachievable. I feel like actually tangibly being around someone makes you kind of think, oh, babe, I could actually do this, and makes it a lot more accessible for people.
Absolutely, yeah. We're just normal people.
Yeah. That's one of the kind of things that I'm trying to do with this, is show that people aren't just the jobs. There's the ways that people have gotten in there, and you can come from a variety of different backgrounds to get different roles that you might not have thought of.
Oh, 100%.
So this may be similar to what you just talked about, but it may be very different. You are allowed to say multiple different versions. What does your ideal day look like? Obviously, you've said it varies, but if you could pick and choose from the variety of different things that you do, what would make your ideal day?
Yes, it's a little bit different than what I just described.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I really like about my job is getting to work on exhibits.
Yeah.
Because it's really neat to see your ideas get incorporated into these signs and these structures that thousands of people that come to the museum are going to see. And it's really fun to work with the exhibit developers because they know best how to physically convey information to people through words and images and kind of hands-on interactive features. So I just really enjoy getting together with them and bouncing ideas back and forth. We can spend 20 minutes discussing the exact right terminology to use in a single sentence, which I think to some people probably sounds like torture, but for us, it's really fun. So for my ideal work day, I think would just be working on some new exhibit.
No, it's really, really fun. I really appreciate kind of talking to people who are very passionate about something. It's like there's such a level of passion that that you're talking with people who have like an equal love. So you go, okay, yeah, no, I agree with you. Maybe we do need to change that. Or how about, you've got two different ideas and you both like value each other's input. I feel it's a really, really wonderful place to be in.
Exactly. Yeah. And when you have a great partnership like that, no one ever feels like if you get something wrong, it's fine, and
Yeah,
that's what science is too. We get stuff wrong all the time. We self-correct. And that's what it's like to work in a great partnership, kind of with anyone in the workplace. It's okay to be wrong. The important part is you get it right and you make something that's just incredible for people coming, in our case, coming to the museum.
yeah. What is something about your role slash job that you find really cool that you don't think the audience or public will know about?
I think the thing that I think is really cool is that, unlike in an academic job where I would be restricted to just my realm of expertise. So for
Hmm.
me, tropical forest ecology.
Yeah,
At the museum, on any given day, I could be working on projects in any range or in any kind of area of science.
yeah.
So some days I write about human biology. Some days I talk a lot about coral reefs. Some days I focus entirely on astronomy. That's a really unique opportunity to have that kind of range. And that's part of what keeps the job really interesting.
Variety is the spice of life, as they say.
And I learn something new every single day.
That's got to be because obviously I really love learning. I love my passion for science comes from the fact that I find it really all different types of science really really interesting, and being able to have that opportunity to obviously be a professional who's quite high, well, very high up in a music science institution, but then still being able to learn different things every day must be really really good.
It's really neat. It's a little bit humbling, right? The things that you don't know.
Yeah,
Um, but it definitely helps you grow as a person too.
I still can't remember who said the quote, but it's like the more you know that you don't know something.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yes. There's a kind of a classic, kind of a meme, for PhD students. It's a graph, and when you're starting out as a student, you think you know everything. And then by the end of your PhD, you realize you know nothing about
Yeah.
anything. And that's sometimes where I am every day.
And
And
then
it's fun.
you're pushed out into the world, and you've got a very very small about one thing, and then you've got to try and use it. It's like, okay, I've got this.
Exactly. And I mean, you realize that the goal of a PhD, and people say this all the time, but it takes a while to understand it, is that you learn how to learn,
Yeah,
right? So you learn when you don't know a piece of information, you know where to go to find that information. And that is a really important skill that I think most people wouldn't even think of as a skill they have, but it's kind of a number one in a workplace.
yeah. I'd love to be able to learn a new fact every day. I do. I try and learn a new. I mean, that's why I love Science Twitter, because I just scroll through and I had no idea about that. That's amazing. Let's go on a rabbit hole for 20 minutes and learn about this thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I
I
love it
mean,
too.
yeah. I mean that's how you get to learn all about the different things. Um, what is something from your past that you unexpectedly use in your current role?
This is a fun question. So I in college,
Hmm.
at least in the US, you can do majors and minors.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like in other systems around the world, but I did a biology major, so of
Hmm.
course science, but I also got a minor in English,
Okay.
which was a very strange combination, and it didn't even really make sense to me at the time. I
Yeah.
just knew, okay, I really like the science thing, but I also really like reading and analyzing texts, and I like writing about them. So I did that combination, and now, many years later, it's basically the fusion of the things I do for work.
Hmm. Kind of probably really helps with obviously working out what wording to use for different exhibits, what's accessible for people. But then I imagine it also helps with the kind of the journalism side of
Mhm.
how to use what kind of voice to use and tone to use with different people.
Exactly. I think what you learn how to write best by
Yeah.
reading other people and seeing how they approach different problems or different topics. So it's it's a great it's a great interest and skill to have.
Yeah. If you hadn't chosen English, what would you have chosen as your minor?
Wow. I honestly, I don't even know.
That is very fair.
I don't have very good art skills or anything. So, sociology and psychology, those things were never my number one.
Yeah.
So I guess if I hadn't chosen English, I might have just been solely science focused.
Ah, okay. Just kind of throwing that out because it's always interesting what kind of different paths people were like if they're, because I know I did biology, but I was potentially going to do geography, and so kind of seeing where people's paths have split and what they could have potentially done is always quite interesting.
Yeah, and career paths are so not linear that you never know. Maybe someday that's where you'll end up.
Very true. Were there any internships, training courses, volunteer work, or previous roles that you did which helped you get to your current role? I know we talked about massive science and kind of how that quite really helped with journalism, but anything similar to that or different?
I think that's really the main thing. By doing that, I got these really practical experiences in things like how do you fact check a piece of writing, copy editing, so attention to detail, even things like choosing the right images and the right headlines for articles. All these things are tasks that I use every single day that experience gave me.
Okay. If you could do it again, are there any internships, training courses, volunteer work, or previous roles that you now know about that maybe didn't exist before that you think would be really, really beneficial if you had done them?
For me, I mean, there's dozens of opportunities that you run into every single day. And sometimes you have the resources to pursue them. Sometimes you don't. For me, I feel like the things that I did worked out really well for me. And at the same time, you never know, like I just said, where your career path is going to take you. So, maybe in 10 years, I'll have a very different answer to this question. But for now, I'm happy with what I did.
Okay. I mean, I'm very happy. I'm very glad that you're happy with what you did. It's really nice because a lot of people, there's a big missing opportunity. It's really nice talking to someone who's you went down the path and you've got what you wanted to, which is really, really lovely to hear.
Thanks. Yeah. And even if, I don't know, I think one thing I've learned just from, this whole process of doing the PhD and looking for jobs is like, even if you don't know where that end goal puts you, where you're going to end up, it's almost certainly going to be something you're good at.
Are there any graduate jobs that now exist in the industry that you feel would benefit someone?
That's a really good question. So right now, I know here in the US, there's a AAAS mass media fellowship.
Okay.
I might have to look up what I think I know what AAAS stands for, but I don't want to tell you the wrong thing.
That's okay.
Yes. American Association for the Advancement of Science. So if people are listening and, live in the US and you think maybe I want to try science journalism, that's an excellent path to pursue. I've had friends that have done that fellowship and come out on the other side working for really well-known publications. And if graduate students or, people who have recently finished degrees just want to get involved in museum work, I think the best thing to do is just to ask. But certainly if you ask, you might find those opportunities.
I think reaching out to people, kind of having talked to people, reaching out and having the confidence to message that person, or kind of, I think we use LinkedIn quite a lot, to kind of just connecting with the people, or because the worst thing that people can say is no.
Exactly.
Is what people are saying. Like, it may be, oh, I don't have anything now, but like, they may have a resource or know someone else that you could talk to. Just having the confidence to take that first step, I feel, makes people a lot more likely to listen to what you're having to say.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. And, that might not be the ideal way to find a job, unfortunately, the system that we're working in. And so, as you said, just take a chance. Just reach out to someone. The worst they'll say is no, or they might ignore you, in which case, okay, no big deal. It never hurts to ask.
Yeah. The more times you try, the more likelihood that you're going to get somewhere. Obviously, you said you applied for 60 different roles. I imagine there was a lot of kind of having to write all of those applications. It was a lot of thinking, am I good enough? Or like, is this going to get me somewhere?
Yes, 100%. There's a lot of, tough moments. It's not easy.
Yeah.
But another side benefit of that is you just get really good at it, right? You write 60 job applications and you get very good at writing a job application. And worst case scenario, now you have that skill that you didn't have before, or you have the skill of just cold emailing people without feeling so anxious about it. It takes practice. It's not something that's easy, but it will benefit you in the long run.
You'll either benefit from what you've learned and, okay, maybe I need to word it differently, or maybe this is the best method that I could go through, or you get, hopefully, a successful interview or someone talks to you. There's always a benefit to doing it.
Exactly. And I've seen the advice, I never did any informational interviews, but I've seen that advice online as well. Okay. So that might be something folks are interested in, just reaching out to someone with a job that you think you might like to do, and asking if they have a little bit of time to talk to you. If it's in person, you can buy them a coffee and just kind of learn about how they got to where they are.
Yeah. I mean, that links very well with my next part of, are you happy for people to contact you to discuss your role / ask advice, and what are your preferred methods of contact?
Yes, absolutely. So the best way to contact me is on social media. So people can find me on Twitter or Instagram or LinkedIn, or also through my website. So I will send you all of those links so that you have them.
And I'll put those in the description of the video, and also out on the social media when this episode comes out as well.
Awesome.
So, do you have anything else you'd like to talk about? Anything you'd like to promote in terms of the museum, in terms of your own work that you might do outside? Any hobbies? One person I interviewed recently does science communication pole dancing, which was very interesting to chat about. Yeah.
I've never heard of that method of science communication, but that's really neat. I think the one thing I have is that I also, do my own research on the side. So research is not expressly or, explicitly part of my job at the museum, but I do have the leeway and sometimes the time to do that. And so one thing, kind of my current research program, in addition to, wrapping up some tropical forest things still from my PhD, is that I'm really interested in the way that by we, I mean kind of scientists who work with biodiversity, portray animals on social media, and then how that affects how people perceive those animals.
Yeah.
So this is a route of research that I'm actively working on with some collaborators. And I think it's going to lead to some maybe actionable, at least guidelines for people. One thing that we're looking at is when people pose holding the animals that they research, how does that affect then how people view those animals? Do they see them as less endangered, for example? And these are the kinds of questions that we're looking into.
That's really interesting research, because I know obviously a lot of people won't get to be in the presence of different wild animals in person. It's either watching Blue Planet David Attenborough, or we've got Spring Watch over here, where kind of there's the cameras in different areas of the UK where they talk about the different animals, and obviously you've got the Irwins, the Australian ones.
Yes,
The Irwins, the Irwins, who obviously do a lot of talking about all different types of animals, and very much kind of try and show the biodiversity. But I feel if people are seeing them, it's like, well, if you've got one, maybe they're not as endangered. Whereas, like, no, there's 35 of them. This one is in captivity because it was really injured, and we're making sure it's staying alive. Like, people's perceptions, I feel, really do vary.
Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of this work has been done with primates, and so that's kind of where we're at right now. I actually pre-PhD ran an orangutan conservation organization. I think that's maybe a story for a different time, but I have a lot of connections with primatologists, and so that's where we've started looking. And I'm hoping that for our next project, we've been kicking around the ideas of either looking at big cats, or maybe bears.
Okay.
These animals that especially at, less reputable petting zoos and stuff, you can still do tiger petting, right? Tiger King was a big thing during the pandemic. We'd like to look more into that as well and see kind of what's going on there.
Is there anywhere for people to, is like on your website, is there kind of information about like updates, or would your social media be the best place to have a look at that?
That's a great question. I think I have a little bit on my website. I will make sure it's there. I know I at least talk a little bit about it on the website.
Because I know I personally would be really, really interested in kind of the updates of what's happening with that and any findings. Obviously, we will be putting out a paper for potentially about it, and that'd be really, really interesting to read.
Definitely, yes. We have one paper out, one paper very much in the works, and one's actually in review. So hopefully pretty soon there will be brand new research about this. Fingers crossed. Yeah.
What, if you don't mind me asking, what is the title of the paper that's currently out?
It has a pretty long title.
I will put it in the description, or I'll put a link to it in the description, don't worry.
Absolutely. It's called Building Better Conservation Media for Primates and People, a case study of orangutan rescue and rehabilitation YouTube videos. Yes, so focusing on a very specific situation, but it's we're interested in lots of things, and it turns out there's the IUCN has a kind of a specialist working group that thinks about human primate interactions, and so they've already got kind of a set of guidelines for primatologists and how they should portray themselves on social media, and a lot of the research that we're doing is very much in support of those guidelines as well.
Just to clarify, who are the ICUN?
Sorry, yes, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature is the IUCN.
Awesome, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. They're kind of one of the largest international scientific conservation organizations.
Yeah. Okay. I always find what different research people are doing fascinating, because there's just such a wide variety, and it's like, I'd never thought of that. That's really, really cool, because it's obviously with science communication, media, obviously YouTube and TikTok and all those different social medias, people have so much access to different information, but being able to actually look at how that's then affecting them as well. Because I know there's people who've got, you see people who've got like wombats as pets, and like the variety of different pets that people have, and then the impact that then will have on the public's understanding and knowledge of, well, is that actually legal for them to have that? Is that accepted? What impact is that then having on people's perceptions of the animals? Yeah,
exactly. That's exactly what we're looking at. And then kind of another thing about social media that I'm not actively researching, but I know people are, is a lot of wildlife trade happens on social media as well. The buying and selling of animals happens certainly on Facebook. I'm pretty sure it happens on Instagram, and I've recently seen reports that it's going on TikTok as well.
Okay,
so it's not maybe not the most uplifting thing, but
no, I know there's my girlfriend's looking for a dog currently, and the amount of dogs listed on Gumtree, and I was like, that concerns me slightly. Just that there's no like checks; it's just sell and then okay. Yeah. Interesting world online.
Exactly. I mean, the pros and cons of having our super interconnected world. You know what I mean?
Very true. It's great for research, but also there's always the bad with the good and the good with the bad.
Exactly. Yeah. So, there's a lot of us out there working to hopefully make it a little less bad.
Yeah. Well, it has been really, really wonderful talking to you and finding out about how you got to where you are, and also finding out your research, which I, again, very interested about.
Thanks.
As I said, you're happy for people to contact you, and that information will be down in the description wherever this is posted. Have you got anything planned for the rest of the day?
I'm not sure. I might go to the pool or something. Like I said, very hot here, so I have to stay cool somehow.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
No problem at all. And to all the audience, the listeners, I hope you found this as interesting as I found it. This will be out on... Well, you'll be listening to it on where I've posted it, so it's out here. It also should be out on YouTube if you're listening to it on Spotify, and Spotify if you're listening to it on YouTube, as well as general social media. and I will catch you in the next episode. Bye.
Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed the episode. I certainly enjoyed making it. If you've got any questions, feedback or recommendations for who you'd like us to talk to, you can send them to our email, themanyfacesofscience@gmail.com. Or you can contact us via our socials on Twitter, Instagram and TikTok. See you next time!